Good afternoon and welcome to the first part of this week's episode 158 of Tree Talk. Myself, Jack Neville and Matt O'Callaghan. In today's pod, we're going to be looking back on all the weekend results. There was obviously semi-finals in the Senior Hurling Championship, Senior Football Championship, Intermediate Hurling Championship. And there's also a full round of ladies football fixtures with the knockout appearance in Senior and Intermediate Championship confirmed. So do stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
He's just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
It was certainly a bumper weekend of action, Matt. Myself and yourself were inside in the two Gaelic grounds on Sunday afternoon. I think we'll start there with the Senior Hurling Championship semi-finals. I suppose in our predictions in the first game, we had both predicted a Doon win, but in a reversal of last year's semi-final tie between Doon and Kilmallock, the team that actually lost in the group stages came through, and it was a fully comprehensive performance and deserving victory for Kilmallock in the end.
There can be no argument about it, Jack. None whatsoever. I suppose it's fair to say that 10 points probably reflected the difference between them. But what it does, what the final scoreline camouflages, if you take a cursory look at the final scoreline, you would immediately be inclined to conclude like that it was a one-sided game. But it was a very good game of hurling. There was some very good quality hurling from both sides. I'd have to say, Jack, before we even delve into one or other of the semi-finals, that we got a sense, and I think I said it during the commentary on Sunday, that while Limerick are where they are in the hurling tree at the moment, with the quality that we saw in the quarterfinals, and it was replicated again in the semi-finals, and the intensity, the power, the scores that were got, it was simply a huge ad for Limerick hurling, and further proof, if we needed it, that the state of the Limerick hurling at the moment, it's in a rude state of good health, and nobody could argue with the Kilmallock victory. It was without question their best performance, not only of this year, but I would say the best performance for the last 3 or 4 years, in fact, because they came into this particular game not with the greatest of pedigree in the current campaign. Like they suffered a defeat to Napearshig in the opening round, and they were so lucky to get over Ballybrown in round 2, and then we had the marathon that they had with South Liberties in the quarterfinal, and but I suppose if they showed anything in the victories over Ballybrown and South Liberties, they showed resilience, which is a huge characteristic. Now, really, they practically took the game from the get-go and from on the front foot last Sunday. Like they were 8 points to 6 up at half time. They had stretched that lead, I think, was it to 6 points, 16 points to 10 by the interval. And of course, then the Kevin O'Donnell goal, it really knocked the stuffing out of Doon. But I suppose credit Doon there, they did have their little spell, a little 4 minutes, a 5 minute spell in which they got a couple of goals, clawed their way back into it, had it down to 6 points for going into the home straight after the second water break. But Jack, you got a sense from a long way out, and we watched it together now, and I don't think we had any doubt, I suppose, possibly from the time that Kevin O'Donnell put the ball in the net for Kilmallock's first goal, but that there was only going to be one winner. We didn't see the spark in Doon that we expected. Like we gave them a bit of latitude in the first half, in that we said that they were coming in after a break and there might be a bit of rustiness and all that sort of thing. But that is not, unfortunately, from a Doon point of view, that was not so. Equally, we were worried going into the second half, and certainly going down the home straight before the second water break, and especially when Doon got the 2 goals, that would tired legs and tired minds click in for Kilmallock after the exertions of the 80 minutes with South Liberties just 7 days earlier. But not a bit of it. It was Kilmallock that finished on the front foot. Yeah, certainly Kilmallock are in the county final and they deserve to be there, Jack. I don't think anybody could argue about it. And, I don't like singling out players, but, the performance of Oisin O'Reilly was, again, incredible.
Yeah.
Now, he was probably helped in a way by the manner in which Doon sat deep and that allowed that extra space there. And we know what he can do. We know what he can do when he gets in possession, and we know the burning, searing pace that he has that can trouble any defence. And he got a couple of goals. He was involved in another. So, 2 goals and 11 points, all from play in 2 games. Nobody can argue with it, Jack.
No, I meant the match both occasions, and his battle with Darren Burns will be fascinating, because I suppose against Dardonovan at the weekend, Oisin dropped off and Dara was dropping back as kind of a sweeper, and it really counteracted the presence of Dardonovan at centre back. And Darren Burns is probably kind of a similar centre back to O'Donovan, so it'll be interesting to see how do Patchwell cope with that in the final. Before we get on to Patchwell and the Pearshig, we have a very interesting comment in here from Adrian Kelly, and this is probably something we can touch on later on in the year. But he says, do you think the gap is closed between the big 4 of Kilmallock, Doon, the Well and the Pearshig, with the likes of Adair and South Liberties, given the results at the weekend? And I suppose going into the weekend, probably the main narrative was it was the same 4 teams for the 5th year in a row. But given the fact that Passwell and Kilmallock both won after being pushed so hard by Adair and South Liberties, and Dara Donovan mentioned it yesterday at the launch of the back-to-back book, the likes of Kildare Palace and all them coming through as well, that gap definitely seems to close in that.
It is closing, and this is something, and Adrian is quite right in making his point, and I concur totally with it, because we were wondering for the last couple of years, and we were wondering in particular this year, because we had hopes last year that we might see a closing of the gap in the quarterfinals, and I suppose to a certain degree, we were apprehensive about it this year as to whether it would happen, but by God, it happened. And Adair and South Liberties did not run Patrickswell and Kilmallock close by accident. There is definitely a closing of the gap. There's no doubt about it. And you're right, Jack, about Kildare Palace Kenneray. Kildare Palace Kenneray are back in senior ranks after 75 years almost, and they're going nowhere soon. Their performance in the championship in their first year up, but we've said this a couple of times. It was typical Kildare Palace Kenray. This slow build up, as we said about made the transition from intermediate to Premier Intermediate to the semi-final to final and winning the final, and now up to senior. A great performance in winning their opening game against Monaleen. Ran Adair so close. Also close, then came back and won the County Cup by any benchmark. It has to be a successful year for Kildare Palace Kenray, but don't rule out Ballybrown either.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and why I say that, and it was a worry I had for Ballybrown going into the game against Kilmallock, in that it was a make or break game for Kilmallock, but I felt it was a make or break game for Kilmallock, but the subsequent game for Ballybrown going into the Pearshig, when they got heavily turned over, I felt there was a residue of the fallout from not the defeat by Kilmallock, but the manner of the defeat. And certainly with young players and a kind of a transitional team on board, I felt that it might militate against them. But all the pointers, Jack, for Ballybrown are very, very good. Premier Minor Hurling Champions under 18 2019-2020. Premier under 19 Hurling Champions in a very emphatic manner in the final, in which they chalked up 230. That all augurs well for the future. And do not forget either that, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it tomorrow about the Junior A Championship. Like that, they came through their group at the top of the group, including a victory over what we thought at the beginning, and certainly I think the bookies and a lot of people thought were the competition favourites, Castletown Ballygran, who subsequently bit the dust. So, there's a reservoir of players in Ballybrown, and certainly now, obviously, I'm not so sure that being relegated was the best thing that ever happened to them, because they're going into probably and most definitely a more competitive Section B in 2022 than we've had heretofore, because right in there will be either South Liberties or Adair, whichever one of them lose the promotion semi-final this weekend. You'll have Kildimo, Palace Kenry in there. Don't write off Gary Spillane. We saw that, took, lost to Blackrock in the first round and bounced back and beat South Liberties in the second round. And we subsequently see what South Liberties did in the quarterfinal. So it definitely is tightening up. And whether it has tightened up enough for somebody to gate crash that top four is the question. I have a sense it may be about to happen.
Yeah, and all it takes is one team to make that breakthrough and show to others that it's possible. And you can't rule out a hand either, because they've shown that they deserve to be in that top tier, that Section A, with winning the relegation final twice in a row. They're only a win away from, I suppose, taking confidence. And they, like Ballybrown, have genuine superstars in their team that can turn a game from. Tom Morrissey was exceptional in both relegation finals. And we have another comment in here from Adrian, Matt. We might as well continue on this line. If anyone's got comments, they can get them in, because we are looking back in the weekend, and there are going to be talking points arising from the weekend. And he said, given Oisin O'Reilly has already been around the Limerick panel previously, do you think Micheál Houlihan could be a new player that's worth taking a look at? And I suppose, I know we've seen Oisin with Limerick before, but I think himself and Micheál could both be given a chance. Micheál, obviously, the first time, but I think Oisin deserves to give another chance with the form he's in at the moment. What's your thinking on those two Kilmallock lads?
My thinking is that both of them should be given an opportunity. Now, it wasn't Micheál Houlihan's best game of the present championship last Sunday, but he was still very, very effective, because the all-action display that we saw from him against South Liberties, that was just one for the ages. And I think his statistic coming into last Sunday's game was 3 games, 34 points, 10 of which were from play. You can't argue with that in 3 games if your free taker chips in with 24 points from place balls, and then puts the icing on the cake with 10 points from play as well. I think that the guy is really worth an opportunity. And what's more about him is that I think particularly this year it is very noticeable that physically he has got much stronger than he had been in previous years. And I'm just looking at your very, very interesting statistic that you're putting up there, and it says that Mike Houlihan is top of the pile now, and unless Aaron Gillan goes mad altogether in the county final. I don't think Micheál can be dislodged out of being leading scorer for this year with 44 points. Tom Morrissey, whose season is over, is on 36, and then we have Aaron Gillan 32, Adam English 31, and the only other one that could become involved, there's no other one that could become involved in it. You go down to Willie Griffin possibly. He will be involved in the promotion playoff, but he has 18 points to make up, and that's notwithstanding what Micheál Houlihan could get in the county final. So certainly, he's one of the informed players. Like we were saying that during the game last Sunday that we thought that Doon should have pressed forward, but when you look at it, Kilmallock made their intentions clear very early on with their long deliveries into the danger area. And like if you're a defence there and you have to marshal Houlihan and Oisin O'Reilly and in the form that they're in, and throw into the mix Graham Mulcahy, who is rapidly getting up to the speed of the championship after his long layoff. Like, then you have some housework to do, you have some housekeeping to do, if to keep the three of them quiet. Now we saw also what David Wolfe had to add, 3 points in inside the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of players seem to come to the boil for the semi-final. We'll say Graham Mulcahy and Dave Wolfe were both quiet against South Liberties, but they were definitely bang on against Doon. And I suppose we'll be talking in depth about
Jack, before we go away from that now, what about the Kevin O'Donnell?
Yeah, and
Kevin O'Donnell, after a couple of years in which he wasn't as much to the fore as he was previously, he certainly reinvented, and he's an absolute huge loss. Tis only in the last two games that we got a sense of the loss that Kevin O'Donnell was during the group stages against Napirsig and Ballybrown.
Yeah, like Kevin O'Donnell is not your stereotypical kind of corner forward, but if he gets any sight on goal inside, probably he's inside the half, he's knocking it over. But we'll be talking about all the Kilmallock players in depth heading into the county final. They're going to play Patrick Swell, and I had a slight feeling.
But just another point, another interesting statistic was, we wondered here last week how would Kilmallock deal with the threat of Adam English, and the simple way that they dealt with was that wherever he was, they picked him up, and it was Philip O'Loughlin that picked him up in the early stages of the game. And at one stage, instead of Philip O'Loughlin marking Adam English, we almost had Adam English marking Philip O'Loughlin, because in the early stages of the game, in the first 15 minutes, Philip O'Loughlin had sent over 2 points and Adam had 1. Yeah. So it was a roles reversal for a while.
Yeah, it certainly didn't go the way we thought, but I'm sure a player like Adam English and that caliber will bounce back. There was a lot of pressure on him.
Of course, he'll bounce back, Jack, and he'll bounce back stronger than ever. But it just leads me to mention about Philip, who has. He has done the captain's armband this year, and like he's in fantastic form for Kilmallock. He's after 2 huge games.
Yeah, and it's very hard to say any of the Kilmallock lads aren't in form, and it bodes well going into the county final against Patrick Swell. Again, I had a slight feeling for Patrick Swell coming into the Napirsig game, and they certainly did more than got over the line. They beat Pat Swell fairly comprehensively in the end, 3-21 to 1-22, but it probably never really looked like Napirsig were going to win. Pat Swell started better and led from start to finish, and again, totally deserving of their place in the final.
Oh, no question about it, Jack. I got both predictions spectacularly wrong, and I wouldn't argue for. Although I did qualify at the end by saying that I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was Patrick Swell and Kilmallock. No, I was hugely impressed by Patrick Swell. Obviously, they played their get out of jail card the previous week against Adair, but it gives you a sense maybe of how much Adair have closed the gap as much as anything. But I thought it was a very, very competent performance by Patrick Swell. Having said that, you would have to agree, Jack, that probably we never saw the real Na Piarsaigh.
No,
and Na Piarsaigh have this habit of, they can be drifting along there for a while, and the next thing, bang, they hit a purple patch, and it's nearly game over. Now, they tried that a couple of times. You will recall that late in the second half, late in the first half, Tom Grimes and David Dempsey got 2 points apiece. They hit 4 points in a row. They actually hit 5 points in a row. I think Kevin Downs added a point to it as well. And at that stage, you'd say to yourself, right, this is the Na Piarsaigh purple patch. They're going to overturn it. And at that stage, Adrian Breen was unlucky not to connect with the goal at his mercy. And you'd say probably had that gone in. No, they came out immediately after half-time and they got 2 inspirational points from David Dempsey and Kevin Downs, almost from the centre of the field. And you'd get the sense immediately this is Na Piarsaigh back in business, and David Dempsey and Kevin Downs are leading from the front, but not a bit of it. At that stage, we had, of course, a very, very telling intervention by Cian Lynch. In fairness, he caught a puck out. That many would say he was no more entitled to catch it no more than we were above in the commentary box. But it wasn't just, he caught it inside among a forest of players. But 'tis only a special player would do it. But 'tis only a real special player would do what he did then, when he spotted the run of Kevin O'Brien and laid it into his path. And even though Kevin Ryan made a fine save from Kevin O'Brien, he wasn't able to keep out Tommy O'Brien's follow-up effort. And, that really put down. I think from that point on, there was 10 minutes after that, I really think it knocked the stuffing and a certain amount of the spirit out of Na Piarsaigh. Because they found it hard to rally after that. To their credit, they kept going, even though the writing was on the wall. And again, if you talk about these defining moments, immediately after the second water break in the home straight, when you'd say, I remember we saying that Na Piarsaig's title was on the line over the next 15 minutes. And William O'Donoghue came out in the space of 2 minutes, got 2 excellent points. And you'd say, is this the catalyst for a final push but no, it didn't happen. Patrick Swell found a response every single time. And there's huge credit due to the Patrick Swell defence. Like they did not give the space. And like there has been talk about a certain amount of fragility and vulnerability in the Patrick Swell full back line. Jack, we haven't seen it in the championship.
No, they were all excellent, and we made a point to say that in commentary numerous times that full back line were immense, and I suppose including that full back line, Brian Murray again. I suppose.
No, well, look. He defies everything, and his save against Adair immediately after half time, when it would have put Adair 6 points up, was one for the ages. But Jack, he made a couple of them again the other day against Na Piarsaigh. This is top drawer stuff. Yeah, this is a player who 14 years ago played in an All-Ireland final, was named an All-Star.
He hasn't missed a beat in that time. There was one in the second half on Kevin Downs' brilliant save. There was one in the first half, I think, on Conor Boylan. And initially, there was a great block by Kevin O'Brien to stop that, but he saved the second one with his feet. And it just shows the experience. And again, we could go through all the Pat Swell players, but I'm sure we'll do a special for the finals.
Before we depart from Brian Murray, apart from his goalkeeping prowess, I think he's such a steadying influence behind the much spoken about full back line, and indeed behind the defence. If you were a guy like that talking from behind you, that is a huge confidence booster. And what's a huge confidence booster also is when he's called upon to make a big save, he makes it.
Yeah, and I think probably the best thing about this final coming into it, it's fairly novel. We haven't had it since 1992, and both teams are bang on form. And it should be a cracking game. But we'll leave it there for today for the Senior Hurling Championship. I suppose moving into the Intermediate Hurling Championship, another real novel final. It's Croke Kilfinney's first year in intermediate grades, I think, and they're straight into the final. They haven't missed a beat. They won 8 in a row in the Junior Championship last year, which didn't conclude till April or May of this year. They went on and won the Intermediate League, and they're one game away from from winning the Intermediate Championship. 117 to 112 over in Pierce. Again, fairly comprehensive. And you had called Croke Kilfinney, so no surprises for you there.
No, there was no surprises for me that it's a Croke Kilfinney effing final. And don't ask me now to call the final. I'll do it when you ask me in due course. There's a small little bit of irony about this, as I have said before. Effin won the Junior Championship for the first time ever in 2010. They went on the following year and won the Intermediate Championship.
Yeah.
Croke Kilfinney are one game away from it. Wouldn't that be a little touch of irony if Effin were the team to prevent him from doing it?
Or even on the other end, if Croke Kilfinney did it against Effin, the original team to do it. But yeah, look, it's a fascinating matchup.
It's fascinating, and like we talked about the impact or the possible impact that Patrick O'Donovan could make in the transition from minor to senior hurling, and I think we got an emphatic answer in the game with Granagh Ballingarry anyway, in which he accounted for 2-9, 2-6 from play. You know that opens up a huge lot of possibilities for Effin, and as he was absolutely outstanding. But his performance was eclipsed by an absolutely peerless performance. And before the caller that called in a couple of weeks ago tells me stop, by Nicky Quaid at centre back.
Yeah,
was absolutely imperious. I'm told it's the talk of the place. The performance that Nicky put in at centre back. So it was all about contain Nicky Quaid when you were facing Effin or contain the Quaids. But now that there's another little fly in the ointment if you're facing Effin, and it's called Donovan.
Yeah, they certainly have threats from all over the field. But I suppose we
Croke Kilfinney, that was nip and tuck right until the finish. Yeah, until Declan Milan came on and got a goal and a point late in the game, very, very late in the game to really put the issue to bed. But that would be typical Brewery. When Brewery get to this stage of a competition, they're always extremely hard to beat. They don't die easy. They won't lie down, and they will fight and fight to the bitter end. And but full credit to Croke Kilfinney to get over the line on that one.
Yeah, especially against Brewery, who had only come down from the Premier Intermediate ranks last year. Like we had said that they would never have thought they'd met, but fair dues to Croke Kilfinney for getting over the line. And we'll do a full preview in a week's time. But which camp? I know both camps will be very pleased to go into a final, but which camp will probably be happier? Like Croke Kilfinney have won, is it probably 13 or 14 championship games in a row at this stage, whereas Effin are probably more experienced at this grade in recent years.
Yeah, I think Effin will probably be the happier. I think they'll be very, very happy with their season. You talk about the randomness of the draw, Jack, and when the draw was made for the intermediate groups, Effin were drawn with Na Piarsaigh and Kilmallock, and you'd say, so what? The so what was that in the randomness of the draw in 2020, they were drawn with the same two teams.
Mm.
You know, which that occurring in itself would command long odds. But whilst last year they were beaten by both of them and had to rely on a relegation semi-final playoff for safety, they had it turned around completely this year, and they had comprehensive victories over both Kilmallock and Na Piarsaigh. So it certainly was no surprise to me at all that we saw the re-emergence of Effin. I had a sense that it may happen, because I saw their 2 games last year, and they both against Napirsig and Kilmallock, and they could have won both of them. You know, they could have won both of them. Is the reality, but didn't. But they made no mistake this year, and I always felt that they had. You always hear clubs talking about talent coming through, this, that, and the other thing, and sometimes it turns out to be illusionary. But I knew in Effen's case it wasn't like that. You had Patrick O'Donovan coming through, and you had young Sean Canning coming through as a good cornerback, and like if you get those kind of players, plus the fact that there are, by my reckoning, there's 6 or 7 of the players, James O'Leary, Patrick Carroll, Michael Ray, Nicky Quaid, Tommy Quaid, Pierce O'Kelly, who is full forward and who had a couple of years with Tyrone, up playing his club hurling in Tyrone, and was a member of the Tyrone senior team. They're all around since the heady days of the early days of the decade of 2010 and 2011. So that's a vast reservoir of experience, and Damien Maloney is around there as well in the squad. So, like, these are all top class players, and then we'll say you have the infusion of the like of Jack Quaid has come in from that time, and as I said, Sean Canning, Patrick O'Donovan, Clive O'Doherty, Paul Tracy, like. A lot of very good players coming through there, so I'm not at all surprised that Effen are in the final.
Yeah, and it promised to be a great game. That game is on the next Saturday, the 23rd, and the day before the senior final is played. And the senior final will be, well, the day will be, we'll start with the Premier Intermediate final between Cappamore and Munger St. Paul's at 1:30 in the 2 Gaelic grounds. All those games will get their due previews next week in full, but it was such a bumper weekend, Matt. We'll move on swiftly to the football we saw, and what we didn't see it because they were clashing obviously, but from what we heard, like, we know that Adair and Newcastle will play in the final for the second time in 4 years, I suppose. Adair beat Galtee Gaels in the first game of the day. It finished 18 points to 1-6. Now, by all accounts, Galtee had a great start, and Robbie Childs opened the scoring for him. They got the only goal of the game from Sean Clancy, but I suppose experience told for Adair in the end, and they're appearing in a 4th final in 5 years, whereas Galtee's first ever semi-final. So probably no real surprise, but probably a bit with the marginal result, and Adair probably sent out a marker that they're gone nowhere.
Yeah, I think that you're right on both counts. A surprise with the margin. Maybe a fraction, but only a fraction flattering. But the big thing was that Adair send a message, to all comers, come and get our title. And like it apparently now, as you rightly said, we were tied up in the Gaelic grounds, and we hope, and it has been said to me on a couple of occasions since, like that, and we spoke about it briefly last week as to why the 2 senior football semi-finals should be on at the same time as the 2 senior hurling semi-finals. Let's hope it never again happens. But all the information I'm getting anyway is that Adair were full value for their victory. They deserved it, and it was the best performance of Adair in the current campaign, which is ominous, and which is coming at the right time. Because if you can survive and get into the last 4 and peak when you get into the last 4, then you're in there with a right chance. But full credit to Galtee Gaels. They gave it everything. I think from what I'm reading and from what I'm hearing, that the defining period of the game was the second quarter, Jack.
Yeah, they outscored them 6-1.
Yeah, when Adair opened up, and it was a 6-point lead in at half time, I think 10 points to 4. But credit to Gaels, they brought it back down to 3 points with the help of a goal from Sean Clancy, like, who has emerged as a real star with Galtee Gaels this year. So Galtee Gaels are disappointed. I've met 1 or 2 of them since. They're disappointed, but they're still proud of the performance of their lads, and they're quite happy, like that. not happy, of course, being beaten, but looking at the year in its fullness and in its totality, they're very, very happy that they got 3 senior football championship victories on the bounce over St. Kieran's, Palestine, and Ula.
Yeah, definitely the most improved side of the year, and there's no shame in falling to Adair. Adair are the premier team in the championship and have been for a few years. But one team that will certainly feel like they are the team to beat is Newcastle West. Not as comprehensive, definitely not. 11 points to 10 winners over Monaleen. They were 11-8 ahead with about 3 minutes to play, I was told. But
that's correct, yeah.
I don't know if they let Monaleen back into the game. They did the same with Galway in the first round. I wasn't there to know if they ever looked like losing, but we did both say we thought Newcastle West would come through the game, and probably for the better, they were pushed to the very limit against Monaleen.
Yeah, they, in terms of semi-finals, as preparation for the final, Newcastle West are entitled to be the happier of the sides, and it was a rematch of the league final, which they lost to Monaleen. A Monaleen team that on the night, as I've said a couple of times, has shot Donald O'Sullivan and shot Brian Donovan for the first half. So it was a big turnaround, because people were inclined to dismiss the leagues a small bit this year. And whilst I would have been of that school of thought to a certain degree in the past, but the way that they ran into the championship this year, I felt that they were, they were preparatory for the championship, and they were more a barometer of what might transpire in the championship than we would have thought in other years, if you get my drift on that.
Yeah.
So I was quite impressed after the league final, I had to say, with Monaleen. I thought they were busy side, well organised, knew what they were about. And it was no surprise to me at all to see them cropping up in I think we said it right from the start, actually, Jack, when we did the preview of the championship, that they could be very, very easily the dark horses. And Newcastle West will be absolutely delighted to be in the final. They'll be delighted to have got a tough game. And they'll be delighted, that they've just got over Monaleen and put to bed that league final defeat. And we were wondering last week, when in the context of looking forward to the Newcastle West Monaleen game, because I'd seen Newcastle West against Monaleen in the league final, as I already said, but I saw him in the first round of the championship, and I wasn't impressed by him, I have to say. And but since it's been onwards and upwards for him. I saw him against Clahan in the quarterfinal, and I was quite impressed by him. And I had seen a transformation from what I had seen weeks earlier, and I had the sense that Newcastle West had left that indifferent form of the early season behind them, and that they were possibly peaking now at the right time. Their performance against Clahan was very good. All the indicators are that their performance against Monaleen was good, and form would suggest that it had to be good for them to win it, even though if there was a criticism that they sat back a bit maybe, and maybe were slightly not adventurous enough at times, but they're in the final. They have turned the form deficit that they had in early season. They've turned that right around, and we spoke about the potential for a highly and entertaining and exciting hurling final. The same goes for our football final, Jack.
Yeah, it's going to be a right good football final, and under lights as well always brings its own different atmosphere. That final is obviously on the 29th of October in the two Gaelic rounds, a week after the hurling. Obviously this weekend we have the intermediate, the Premier Junior and one of the Junior A semi-finals. We'll look forward to them tomorrow. This is strictly looking back. We also had a full round of ladies football over the weekend, and in the top two tiers, in the senior and intermediate, they're now into the knockout stages. The pairings have been confirmed, and we'll just go through the results there, Matt. In the senior championship, Mona GAA had a second win, 3-10 to 4 points win over St. Bridget's. Ballylanders beat All Mill to go top of the table 6-8 to 8 points. In the Intermediate Championship, from Broadford, who were champions last year, beat Knockany 4-9 to 1-5 to book their place in the semi-final. Maru Boher got a first win this season. They beat Father Casey's 2-18 to 1-5. And then in the Junior A Championship, it was 3 from 3 for Galtegale, 7-13 to 8-6 winners over Ahan, and Atay picked up the first win of the year. They beat Crudigales 3-8 to 1-8. And in the B Championship then, St. Senan's big winners over Ger Griffins in a West Derby 8-10 to 2-5. Croom beat Monagay 1-7 to 2-2. Broadford were winners over Palace Green 3-6 to 2-3. And St. Ailbe's were 4-12 to 8-point winners of Ballylanders. A lot of second teams being there. But we'll just focus on the Senior Championship firstly, Matt. Another win for Monagay.
Just before you go into the Senior Championship there, I'm just talking of big scores over the weekend. The Galtegale scored there 7-13 to 8-6. Yeah. It must be a weekend for fancy scores, because in the Group 2 of the Junior A Hurling League, we had a score, Garris-Ballan 7-17. Monagay 5-20.
Yeah, we'll be looking at that game tomorrow.
There's one for you, but that was a dead rubber game. But this was a cut and thrust championship game, the Galtegales game.
Yeah, the neutrals definitely got their value for money in Monagay versus Garris-Ballan. But sticking with the ladies' football and the senior, Monagay, I suppose, sent out another warning that they're coming back for their title. They lost a couple of years. They went 2 from 2. They go straight into the semi-finals.
Just to reflect on that group, Jack, briefly, like 3 teams in the group, and of course, as we've said from the outset, the group stage is nothing more than a seeding process for the knockout stages. And in the first round, we had that mammoth win by Fiona Castlemahan over St. Bridget's, and we wondered where were both sides at. And we quickly got our answer when Monagay had a huge win over Fiona Castlemahan in the second round. So, like anything other than a win for Monagay, looked most unlikely in that game, and that game had gone to Forum. And it means that Monagay are gone into the final now. Fiona are gone through in second place, and they will face Old Mill. And Bridget's will be involved in a very juicy local derby against St. Ailbe's. But if you go to the other group, Jack, and we're talking here about fancy scores earlier on there. Like in that group to date, in the first round, you had a draw between St. Ailbe's and Ballylanders. Now, St. Ailbe's are the defending champions.
Yeah. And
then you had a draw between St. Ailbe's and Old Mill. And we all wondered what was that telling us, other than that we would have a cracker of a shootout between Ballylanders and Old Mill in the third round. And we even wondered, I think, last week in our musings, nor did we think that we could have 3 draws and it would go down to scoring difference. Yeah. But Ballylanders win the game by 6-8 to 8 points.
Yeah, it just shows on any given day, any team can beat any team. But it does make for very interesting knockout stages, not to cut across there, Matt. But I'll just give you the pairings in the knockout stages. So you have Fiona Castlemahan will play Old Mill, and St. Ailbe's will play St. Bridget's. And I suppose for Bridget's, things don't get any easier for them against the defending champions looking for 3 in a row.
No, it certainly doesn't get any easier for them. And those games are penciled in for the morning of the county final. The quarterfinals are on for Sunday, the 24th of October at 11:30, I think, 11 or 11:30 at venues to be confirmed.
Yeah, and then
it's certainly like, in geographically, at least you have 2 juicy quarterfinals in that you have a West Derby, each side of the county town, Fiona, Castlemahan and Old Mill. And over in the east, then you have near neighbours, and of course arch rivals St. Bridget's and Saints. You have the Battle of the Saints. So 2 very, very interesting quarterfinals. But you just have to wonder about St. Bridget's. Like, certainly it would appear that for now at least, and certainly in the group stages, that their form has deserted them. But I suppose, as we've seen, that there is nothing better to focus a mind than a knockout championship game.
Oh, certainly not. And then in the semi-final draw is made as well, and that's to be played 2 weeks later. So for Monaghan and Badlanders, they have a break until November 7th. Now, usually a long break probably wouldn't suit teams, but with the Camogie on as well, it probably isn't the worst break to get. Monaghan will play the winners of St. Ailbe's versus St. Bridget's, and Badlanders will play the winners of Fiona Castman and Old Mill. Those games are on November 7th, and I presume they will probably be played a bit later in the day, Matt. I suppose they're always played early on a Sunday morning, but for a semi-final, you'll be hoping it'll be on probably later in the day to allow for more.
Well, I know if the last year's template is taken on board, I think that they're played around 2 or 2:30 in the evening, because I was at one of them last year.
Yeah, you'll be hoping just for the players.
Like, we don't want to preempt anything, but there is the makings of a repeat of last year's county final, which was a humdinger between St. Ailbe's and Monaghan in the semi-final.
Yeah, and you don't want to. Yeah, you want to go.
I'm not preempting that. I'm not for 1 minute dismissing St. Bridget's, but what I'm saying is there is a possibility of it in the horizon.
Yeah, and I suppose swiftly moving on to the intermediate championship, then we had obviously the defending champions, Drumbraadford, made it 2 from 2, and the previous round, Mungret St. Paul's, who were beaten in the final for the last 2 years, also had a 100% record, so they go straight through. So the quarter-final ties are Knockany versus Maru-Boher and Ula versus Father Casey's. Drumbraadford will play the winners of Maru-Boher and Knockany, whereas Mungret St. Paul's will play the winners of Ula versus Father Casey's. And not to preempt again, but look, it could be a repeat there again of Drumbraadford versus Mungret St. Paul's. It's certainly set up like that, but Knockany, Maru, Ula and Father Casey's will have their say.
Yeah, they will have their say. Like Mungret St. Paul's, as you rightly said, there had victories over Maru-Boher and Father Casey's, which left the weekend's game as only playing for second and third. They had bagged the semi-final spot before the ball was kicked at the weekend. So, but they were ran very, very close by Maru-Boher in the opening round. So it may not be as clear cut as that, but they obviously they will avoid each other until the final. Drumbraadford, of course, have been very, very impressive winners over Ula and Knockany. So yeah, you're right. It could be, but again, we're preempting. That let's say there is a possibility that this year's final will be a repeat of last year's final.
Yeah, well, so that is a possibility. But look, with there 6 teams left in both competitions, you don't know what way it's going to play out. And obviously, in the Junior A and Junior B championships, there's 2 more rounds to play. In the Junior A championship, it's 1 group of 5, whereas the bottom team is knocked out. First plays 4th, and second plays 3rd. And then in the Junior B championship, there's 2 groups of 5. The top 2 in each group will play each other in the semi-final. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Tomorrow, we're not finishing yet, but just tomorrow, for anyone that's tuning in now, we're going to be looking ahead to the weekend. This was just a look back on all the fixtures we have this weekend in store. We have the intermediate football semi-finals. We have the Premier Junior football semi-finals. We have 1 Junior A semi-final. We have the 4 quarter-finals in the Junior A championship. And we'll do probably a roundup of the Junior A championship, the group stages, because there was so many permutations coming into that final round that you probably want a couple of hours to go through it. So we have the final.
Slide rule territory, Jack.
Sorry?
Slide rule territory.
Well, there was so many teams and it was so competitive, and only 1 team was through going into the last round. So it was a fantastic championship. So tomorrow again, another bumper episode, and we'll obviously have the predictions at the end. But before we finish up today, Matt, correct me before I start, we've all the games from last week look back on. Unless we also have the Junior B championships look forward to tomorrow, unless you want to do them now, Matt, it's your call.
Yeah, and then we have the Camogie Championships to look forward to the final round of the Camogie Championships of the group stages of the Camogie Championship next week. So, yeah, look, the Junior B Championships are progressing along nicely. We're, for instance, in the city, as we speak. Mungret St. Paul's have beaten Clahan in the city final, so they will come out as winners. Clahan as runners-up. The final of the Junior B hurling will be known after tonight. Kildimo Palace Kennery are in the final, and the Piershick and Patrickswell are meeting in Caherdavan tonight. It was due to be played last week, but due to unforeseen circumstances, it didn't take place. So it's going to take place tonight. Now in the west, the way is clear for the hurling final. In that it's Adair and Newcastle West are through to contest the final, and in the football it will be down to the final after Sunday, because the two semi-finals are down for decision on Sunday. So I think it's Newcastle West and Atay and Knockaderry and some crowd down in the estuary called Ballysteen. Would that be right, Jack?
Well, it's Granagh Ballingarry and Atay. I don't know if I give you false information before I start, but it's Granagh Ballingarry and Atay.
Yeah.
Ballysteen topped their group ahead of Atay. So best of luck to the lads on Sunday against Knockaderry. Obviously, Knockaderry.
You're ineligible because of your senior exploits, Jack.
Yeah, for standing in front of goal for 2 games before my back gave out. But it's difficult because Knockaderry and Granagh Ballingarry, it's their first teams, so they're obviously going to go in as favourites. But yeah, that's the way clear in the west and the city.
No, in the east, the way is nearly clear as well. Cappamore have won the hurling.
Yeah.
They beat Ballybrick and Bohermore last weekend, and the football final is down for decision this Saturday, and it's a little juicy one between Nacan and Fedamore.
Yeah,
Nacan, who were champions in 2019 and were involved in that huge county final with Bannog, which attracted a record attendance to Father John Ryan Park in Kilbredy. And to the south, where I'm most familiar, the football has been disposed of. Galbally have beaten Croom. They beat them 3 weeks after shifting a 7-goal defeat in the group stages. So much for league and championship, you know.
Yeah.
The argument now it's down to the semi-finals in the hurling now, and if you were a board officer in the south, there are kind of 2 semi-finals that you would write for, because one of them is a repeat of last year's final, which was a Herculean struggle before Brewery got the better of Blackrock. So they meet on one semi-final on Saturday evening at 4:30. But the other one is an unusual semi-final. It's a parish derby. The 2 ends of Bruff Parish. You have Bruff against Camogue Rovers.
Yeah.
So that will be very, very interesting. They met in the final in 2017, and Bruff won it by a couple of points. That they should bring out the spectators on Saturday evening.
Yeah, they promise to be loads of great games there. And as we get towards finals, there's so many games on. We'll be looking more in depth, but we'll keep an eye on all the championships from here on in, because we have.
Yeah, but if we're looking back, Jack, there were 2 very interesting under-19 A championship semi-finals last night. Coshley Gales, who would be a combination of Staker Wallace and Effin. They got over Croke Kilfinney Rathkeil 4-14 to 16 points. The aforementioned Patrick O'Donovan would have been on board with Coshley Gales. And the second semi-final was a humdinger between Nave Owen, who were drawn from a combination of Knockcaney and Hospital Helberstown. They beat Cappamore 217 to 215 after extra time. So it sets up an under-19 A final with half South Limerick involved in it.
Yeah, music to your ears anyway. I'd say that's probably as good a roundup as we're going to be able to do with all these games. But as you said, we'll keep an eye on all these championships coming up. We obviously have the start of the Under 21 Premier Hurling Championship next Tuesday, if I'm right, Matt, which we'll see.
That's right. So it'll be full steam ahead every Tuesday night now for the next month, you know.
So for anyone thinking that their opportunity to go see games was coming to a slow end,
and Jack, if that's not enough, the football under 21 football is starting after it.
Yeah, and also the A championships then are starting just a bit after. I just know for Palestine in the A football championship, it's not until the start of November. So from here until Christmas, we're still going to be as busy as ever. There's so many games to get on. I suppose in the cold evenings, it'll warm you up a small bit. But I suppose before we finish, Matt, there's an appointment for a Limerick man. We'll look to Saoirse Bulfin, who we might know from his time with Davy Fitz, and he, as you mentioned before the podcast to me, he led Bruff to the Intermediate Camogie Championship last year. He's been appointed manager of Meath for the upcoming year. I suppose just rewards for the Limerick man.
He's actually been appointed the coach to the Meath Senior Hurlers, and Saoirse brings rich pedigree to that position. Like he's been involved through the colleges, and as you rightly said, he led coach Bruff to win the Intermediate Championship. Adrian Kelly, I think, is sending us in a message: Bruff versus Camogie, guaranteed timber.
No. Bring us there early for the sideline in case.
Yeah, but getting back to Saoirse, both clubs who would be very dear to him there now, it's appropriate maybe that they mention him. But he's had a long innings with Davy Fitzgerald as his right hand man, and was involved with Davy Fitzgerald when they led Clare to All-Ireland victory in 2013, and has subsequently spent 4 years with Davy Fitzgerald in Wexford, and that included winning a Leinster Championship. Now that Davy Fitzgerald is off the management radar for the moment, anyway. Saoirse has received this appointment, and I would have the utmost respect and regard for Saoirse Bulfin as a man, first of all, and as a coach and as a GAA mentor, and I certainly think that it has been a very prudent appointment in my view by Meath, and I think that it will pay them dividends going forward.
Yeah, and it's good to see a Limerick man probably, I suppose, go broadening his horizon. I know he's been all over the country with Dave Fitz as it is, but there's always room for someone in the Limerick setup. Obviously, John Kiley has made some adjustments to his team over the years. Probably wouldn't be surprised to see Saoirse involved with the Limerick team in future. I suppose before we go, Mark Handley here is asking for a prediction on Pashwell and Kilmallock. Are you going to spill the beans, or are you going to hold out for another week, Matt, till the week of the game?
Mark, you'll have to sit on it for a week.
Yeah, that's how you do it here. I'm trying to reel people in to watch next week. But I suppose that's it for today, for the preview of the weekend. So many games to look back on. Tomorrow we'll have a huge number of games to look forward to. It's great to have your vast knowledge there, Matt, for all the championships. I don't know how you find the time to get around to them, but you managed to do it.
I just wish they were on at all different times, Jack, so I could get to see them all.
Yeah,
you have one up in me in that you've seen Junior A hurling championship matches because of your ties with Eskeet, and I haven't seen any yet.
Yeah,
but I'm going to rectify it at the weekend, though, Jack.
Yeah, I thought as much, but from what I've seen from the Junior A, like obviously Mungret I saw, and who else came out of Mungret's Group 2, two brilliant teams, like, and I'm sure they'll have their say in the last day, but. That's all for tomorrow, Matt.
I'll be seeing Doon on Sunday. They're playing St. Kieran's and Kilmallock.
We play Kieran's as well in the league, and obviously I know a couple of the boys from Kieran's, and they're going well, because I suppose during the league they kind of started slowly, but they've definitely ramped into Kieran. They were winners of the championship not so long ago, really. Like, so they'll have a few players.
They must be really, really going well in hurling at the moment, Jack, because they beat Glenroe last night by a single point in the Junior B under 19 B quarter final. My own Glenroe 114 to 113.
Yeah,
so hurling must be on a high in St. Kieran's when that happens.
Well, to beat Glenroe, hurling has to be on a high. I suppose tomorrow we'll look at hurling and football, but for now, a huge thanks again, Matt, and we'll chat again in the morning. Thank you.
Okay, Jack, you're welcome.
Impression the game, we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there